Good morning, everybody. It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you. I'll wait till a few more people come in here. I know it's been a while. I know it's been a really long time since I've been here, so I wanted to say what's up to everybody. I said I was going to go live in the last post, so here I am. I'm live. We'll wait till we get about 300 people in here like we always do, and then we'll go right into it. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. And for those of you that are on the other side of the world, good evening. Recently, I made a post about how taxpayer funds that were supposed to go for COVID relief for small businesses and for individuals that were going to lose everything were redirected to the church. And they got $1.4 billion of COVID aid. But it wasn't because their members had COVID. It was because they had to settle a series of lawsuits for the sexual molestation scandals that they've had. So I made a post on my page, and a lot of people have been reacting to it because, we've all had to struggle and we've all had to tighten up our belt during this time. Now, there are some people out there who have millions and millions of dollars, right? So for them, it was a little bit easier to wait out the pandemic. For average, ordinary people, that was not the case. And I think that we're coming to a point in our society where people are re-examining this mirage of authority, right? That's the topic of today. The government has a mirage of authority. The church has a mirage of authority. Without you giving them that authority mentally in your life, they don't have that authority. Like an abusive person, right, who thinks they can manipulate you, and therefore they believe they have authority. And they've done certain things in life to put you in a position where it's hard for you to complain or even see the things that they're doing wrong. This is the same thing we have here. And I think it's necessary for us to have these kind of conversations. Oh, man. I think that when we talk about abominations and for people that are religious, this is why America is going to hell, right? Like, I grew up believing in God. I grew up reading the Bible. It's not the existence of gay people. It's not women getting abortions that are the reason that this country is going to hell. It's because of its horrific past, its inability to deal with that past. The truth is this. The left in this country, the manufactured left, I should call them, co-ops that past without really addressing it at all. And the right wing is just in total denial of that past. And anytime you bring up any legacy of racism or native genocide, now they want to hide behind wokeness. Oh, that's just, you're trying to be woke. No, I'm trying to be right. I'm trying to be intelligent. I'm trying to be well-read. I'm trying to be understanding of other people's cultures. I know more about European culture than most Americans do. They never bother to learn it and realize how connected America is to that. How on the Senate there are two fasci. The fasci are a load of sticks and a small axe bound together in a string. And that's the same thing that was on the Senate of Rome when it was converted to a fascist dictatorship. You have to recognize these things. I'm not saying that everything's a farce, that there's nothing real in life. There's a lot of things that are real. But I think that there's a difference in between being intelligent, well-spoken, and well-versed on something and just a virtue signaler. I think that some people out there are benefiting from calling every single person woke or trying to be a virtue signaler when they can't really compete with the points that they're making about how twisted our society is, right? You see people, I want immigrants to be okay. I want them to go back to their own home country. Well, you don't really care about immigrants then. You're just trying to throw them out in the most nice way that you can, but we don't see you post anything to help those people, right? You want children to be born in this society, but you don't give women any prenatal care. Every other country in this fucking world gives you money off when you have a child. Even hold on, let me say something. We're not just talking about Europe or like France and England and Germany that give away like 6 weeks of like post birth care. Like, are you kidding me? It's not just them. I'll do you one better. You know that during the Taliban, they did that too? When women had children, wherever they were working or whatever they were doing, if they were working at a storefront, just obviously they couldn't hold other jobs, but they gave them a stipend for their child. In this country, you don't even get a long Friday off. They'll fire your ass. And now there's laws that protect that have come out within the past decade or so. But come on now. This is what we're dealing with. You want to force your moral authority on people, but that's not going to happen because you don't have any moral authority. As religious people, I want to make something very clear to people who believe in God and don't believe in God. When you abuse the power that you've been given in a godly position, your fall is 10 times the fall of a kafir, of a non-believer, of a heretic, of a liar. When you purport to be of God, when you purport to be a priest or an imam or a rabbi, and you touch children and you molest people, then you are that much more damned in the eyes of God. Therefore, as a religious person that follows those people, if you do not adhere to those tenets and you abuse them, then you are even more guilty of these things. So when we talk about death and we talk about who's sponsoring death, we've had a war for the past 20 years in which countless children have been murdered. And there hasn't been really that much noise from these religious folks that are now claiming that every aspect of our society needs to then revolve around this religious debate, whether it's abortion or something. But abortion it became a religious topic during the 50s and 60s. I think that it was all they really had. And now, honestly, I think it's the best thing that Democrats could probably run on. They weren't going to run on the Ukraine. They weren't going to run on COVID. It's just really sad that it takes this for people to do that. When in reality, the Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the Congress. They could have reinforced this and codified it into law whenever they wanted it. But they dangled it over people's heads. The same way Republicans do, to be honest, because they're always promising that they're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. But I think the big difference is here that Democrats as a whole in the 21st century, and many would argue for most of the 20th century, their position was simply to push away at the left aspect of their party, whereas Republicans today openly embrace or consistently use the far right of their party. So it's an interesting strategy. Anyway, man, I'm homesick. Definitely feel a little bit like shit, but I was really enjoying having this conversation with you guys. I appreciate you so much. Let me see. I'm going to look at the comments, which I never really do, just so I can talk to you. Shady Technique said, I painted your lyrics on a school playground, and many kids like it. I'll tell you what, Shady, I will definitely, Shady Technique, I will get some new lyrics and put them out so you can put them up in another place. Abortion shit, S.Wavy said, this abortion shit, is it just to distract from all the real shit going on? Well, S.Wavy, to answer your point, it will take COVID and the Ukraine out of the news for a while, being that Russia's now making gains in the Donbass and they've started bombarding convoys that are coming from NATO with supplies to the Ukraine. So definitely, of course, abortion being in the news cycle will take away from COVID being in the news cycle and will take away from the war in Ukraine being in the news cycle. Putin says nuclear warhead wipes out. Yeah, no. Let me see. Any other questions? When you coming to Toronto? Ronacan, I would love to go to Toronto now, but unfortunately, the people that book my shows think that I need a new record to go places. So I don't know how I'm going to contend with that. I got so many offers this summer for festivals and stuff, so I might just do them. But I definitely do want to finish the record. Let me see. Pfizer just released 90,000 documents. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in those documents, things that were oversights, but I don't think that the news is anything we didn't know. Like the Ray J stuff that came out. We all knew that that was something that everyone did together for business. Now, in Pfizer, they're saying that they held back some of the data that was indicative of the risk for some people in taking the vaccine, which I don't doubt that they did. Let me see. Feel better, Tech. Thank you. I appreciate that. Have you been watching the Johnny Depp? V6 said, have you been watching the Johnny Depp trial? Has been filmed, but not Ghislaine Maxwell. Well, I kind of felt like that was going to be the case anyway. Immortal Fiasco episode coming to Chuck Taylor 88 asks, well, you'd have to ask Lupe. He's a busy guy. I'm definitely down to do it, though. What do you think of the Vatican institution and their extremely large wealth in banks and land? Well, Taro DeFabio, I'll answer your question in this way. I always thought that was interesting that Catholic charities demand what they call a decimo. Decimo is a tenth of people's, yearly wage. And people in Latin America are pretty serious about that. They give the decimo sometimes. They give 5-10% of their yearly wage to the church in the hopes that that means charity. But what actually happens is that in every country in Latin America, whether it's Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras, Panama, Colombia, Peru, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, donde sea, these people send their money, and the Catholic Church then takes 10% of their giant decimo and sends that back to Latin America as charity. And you people expect me to be stupid enough to think that that's actually charity. That's money laundering. And I'm sorry for the religious people that are offended by that, but I stand behind that statement. That is not charity. That is money laundering, okay? Are you supporting Loki against his music being removed? A1 London. Yeah, I signed the decree. I was on his page. Why wouldn't you know that? How can I get your Middle Passage album? Through the website. Sign up to immortaltechnique.com, the new website, and get on it. Nip Liverpool 88. Why haven't you been on Joe Rogan's podcast in 7 years? I've seen Joe Rogan a bunch of times during this. I haven't talked to him in a few months, ever since that whole shit happened where he just turned his phone off, changed his numbers, and it must have been really hard. But I definitely sent him a message of support. I just don't think it was my position to accept his apology on behalf of all black people. I think that that's a little bit presumptuous, to say the least. But I always try to see the best in all of my friends. I just know that certain people, you can't convince them of anything. But I'll be back on that podcast, hopefully. Are libertarians just closet Republicans? This is an interesting question. Okay, here we go. It's Marco 915. I think libertarians, like anything else, have a left and a right-leaning vector, right? There are left-leaning libertarians that I know, and there are right-leaning libertarians that I know. The right-leaning libertarians that I know aren't really Republicans, but they are conservatives. That's what you need to realize, right? So when you debate with them, be careful to call them a Republican. You have to identify them properly. They're not libertarian, they're conservatives that have a libertarian view of the world, right? But that's the difference. A left-leaning libertarian is not a socialist by any means. But I think, oh man, this is great. I really appreciate having these conversations with you guys. Here we go. Come to the Philippines, Sedia Efek. I would love to come to the Philippines. Thank you. Please invite me. Jason Joe, how is the book coming, OG? I can't wait to read it. I think that you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Avila 1294 says, what's your take on Sumerian culture and the belief of the creation of Homo sapiens? Okay. The Sumerians believed that a divine creature who ruled the universe called Lord Anu planted a seed of life on Earth. And the seed of life was supposed to create valuable minerals that he could come and collect. Supposedly, he said the planets are like flowers, right? And when they're ripe, the fruit must be picked. So, originally, they had machines do it, allegedly. And this is, listen, you'll find different variations of the mythology. But if you look at metal, metal will rust. Like if you find an ancient sword or a breastplate or a shield from like 1,000 years ago, it has to be buried in water or buried in sand in order to still exist, because iron or steel even has a half-life of 1,000 years. It'll melt into dust, okay? So even if these entities had drones that were coming down here, within 100 years, they would have to travel back to Earth to rebuild more drones and fix them. Even titanium has a half-life that isn't incredible in comparison to a lot of other things. So they made something else according to legend, which is us. And we don't need a half-life because we can reproduce and collect the minerals they want. It's a wonderful story, and I think a lot of stuff is based on Sumerian mythology. There are parts of the Bible, the flood story, the epic of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, but I think that you have to take all like world history into account if you want to make a theory like that really be the staple of what you believe. Let me see. Alexian Gizian 55 Technique. You're the fucking man. Thank you. Do you believe that NATO is responsible for the terrorism that stems in this country? You mean Ukraine? That's a hard call. I know that the Ukrainian people don't feel that way. The vast majority of the Ukrainian people that I've talked to firmly blame Russia for everything that's going on. The vast majority of Russian people that I've spoken to say that it's NATO's encroachment and that they've always had this idea to try and surround Russia, that they've never actually been formally allies. But also you have to remember that unlike the United States, NATO, or excuse me, those European countries that form NATO now, during the Russian Revolution, purposefully backed the Tsar, the king, and didn't want the USSR to come into existence. So they've always had a very tumultuous relationship. You're never going to get one side to agree to the other. But one thing that is interesting that this brings up is that when it comes to the Ukraine and it comes to Russia, Chernobyl was their version of Vietnam, right? Vietnam was a big time in the United States where not just black and brown people, but specifically a lot of white Americans looked at their government and said, this is a lie. You told us that this is before weapons of mass destruction too. Millions of Americans, white, black, brown, but especially a huge chunk of middle America, middle white, God bless them, the people who would have been MAGA, like they said to themselves, no, the Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. We're bombing other random countries. So what's the equivalent in Russia? Some people would say it's Afghanistan. but Afghanistan was the slow bleed. I think if we talk about a subject matter that's touchy, but that relates to the Ukraine and relates to Russia, is that Chernobyl was a big reason that that the USSR and that Russia lost a lot of credibility amongst its own people. Because when the incident happened, these individuals just said, okay, keep the party going. It's another May Day parade. They didn't warn the public that that was happening. But I think, look, you have lots and lots of counterpoints and bullet points that you can make for both sides of the argument. It's just that one thing that has been proven by this incident is that Western media runs the world, right? Now, I feel very horrible for the people of Ukraine that got their houses blown up, and I don't support no Nazi Azov battalion. But here's the thing I'm going to tell people. The United States, in my opinion, has no interest in helping the Ukraine or the Ukrainian people. It sees a long-term game in which they will use the Ukrainian people's suffering as a tool of war. And they're going to have lots and lots of refugee children that grow up despising Russia. And they're going to use that. And Russia is going to have a much clearer perspective now. It always wanted to know who were its allies in Europe and who were the people that were diametrically opposed. And now it has those obvious answers. But I think that one thing that is important to note is that in the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, the West wants to use Ukraine as an anvil to hammer Russia, which means there won't be anything left of the infrastructure of that country. And I think that that's sad. And it's hard for me to tell people, hey, the best thing to do is to sue for peace. Could I tell the Palestinians to give up? Could I tell the Kurds to give up fighting? Could I tell anybody to give up fighting? Right? Now, I understand that there are some far-right elements in the Ukraine, and there's plenty of human trafficking in Russia and the Ukraine. These people can manufacture reasons for going after those individuals. But here's an interesting tidbit, and this isn't to choose one side or the other. The United States has a lot of far-right elements in the military. It has some fucking Nazis in our military too. I think that's what makes it disingenuous for a lot of people that are looking at it from kind of a world perspective. And that's the tough part. But just remember that it's not Russia that's just fighting. It's not like Moscow. The Russian Federation has all of these districts. And so it's the Chechens fighting. It's people from Tatarstan. And this is going to continue for a very long time, I believe. I would not like it to continue. I hope that they can find some peace. But I think that, again, this is me telling people it's very hard for me as an individual to tell other people to give up, to lay down their arms, to stop fighting. Especially if they think they're defending their home, or if they know they're defending their home. It's a very difficult thing. But if you want my honest assessment of the war, I think Putin's pincer attack on Kiev was a distraction. He doesn't want Kiev. I think it would be very hard for him to occupy the entire country, being that you would be immediately locked in a guerrilla war. He sees the failures of Iraq and Afghanistan, and I don't think he wants to repeat that. I think the attack on Kiev was a distraction so that all of its forces would be there. Now they have to cross this horrible strait to get to Donbass and Luhansk, and even near the Crimea. That's why Mariupol was not supposed to fall, but it did. And now the entire East will be annexed because they had to defend Kiev. You know what I mean? For the Russians, it was a win-win. We take Kiev, okay, cool, we crack the country. But if we don't, then we force them to bring all of their forces to the northwest, and we will be all of us in the southeast. All right. I appreciate all the love. I'm going to get out of here. People have stopped asking a bunch of questions since I've taken so much time answering questions now. I just want to say that I feel very, very much in my heart for anybody that's caught up in a war. And whether you running from a bunch of drug cartels and crazy shit in Central America, or you running from Russian bombs or Ukrainian artillery, or you're running from a government, I don't care what it is. I feel terrible for the people that are out there that have to live like this. You know, I'm home sick and I'm tired and I'm fucked up, but man, I can't imagine living in a place where someone's trying to kick down your door and shoot you and kill you. And, you know, I think that I got a place in my heart, and that's why I've always been against war and destruction, you know. I think it's obviously sad that we've come to a place in America where we don't even have a shared history. And I think it's inevitable that there will be some kind of conflict in this country, unless, of course, there's a cataclysmic event that brings the country together. Not like 9/11. No, I mean like a cataclysm, like an asteroid coming so close to the Earth that it almost scrapes the surface. I love you guys and I appreciate you. You want me to save this live, or you know what I mean? I mean, we talked about a bunch of stuff, but I didn't scream or go off, and I guess I'm just trying to do whatever I can. Anyway, though, I love you guys, and I appreciate all the love and support that I've gotten. And there, I like that one. I appreciate all the love and support that I've gotten, and look forward to touching base with you again. Definitely working on a new project, and I got a new website, immortaltechnique.com, which is where you can sign up to receive a newsletter and everything that's going on with me. Of course, please support the Rebel Army Runs, at Rebel Army Runs, and thank you very much. I'm going to end in the customary way of giving shout-outs to everybody that tells me where they're from. So if you could tell me where you're from, I'm going to give you a shout real quick, all right? I love you guys. And just tell me where you're from, and I'll give you a shout-out. Shout to Amsterdam in the motherfucking building. Michigan is in the house. Toronto is in the house. Utah is in the house. Shout to Chicago. Sweden is in the building. North Carolina. Canelo or Bivol. Probably Canelo. Japan is in the building. South Carolina. Washington Heights. Colorado. Man, Lincoln Park. Damn it, SoCal. A lot of people in the building. Another person from Norte California. Peru. Haarlem in the Netherlands. Miami. 305. San Diego. Man, Vinny Vels, I love you, my brother. AZ, Arizona. Arizona in the building. Man, I want to see David Benavidez come out. Macedonia, Australia, Oklahoma. Man, I appreciate you. Have a good night, man. Peace.